Now, do you remember when Scott Morrison wandered into Parliament? It's a couple of years ago now, with a lump of coal. He had a big lump of coal and he pulled it out of his pocket and he said, "This is coal. Don't be afraid of it. It's not going to kill you. It's great. It drives our economy," or something like that. And all the lobbyies on the other side of Parliament, "Oh, no, all hell broke loose." He hasn't repeated that stunt since, but I certainly wish he would. Australian coal is among the best in the world. According to geologist Ian Plimer, because ours is such an older continent than most, say, for example, Indonesia or other continents, the coal has been suppressed for that much longer, and therefore it is purer, provides much more energy than, say, brown coal, which is dirtier, and other coals that you will find elsewhere in the world. So, by definition, if you believe in catastrophic climate change, you should be saying we need more Australian coal going all around the world, replacing anywhere that's not using coal as good as ours. But of course, lobbies, oh, no. They want to demonise our coal industry, drive people out of jobs, push people onto the dole queue because of this mad climate ideology. Joining me now is Stephen Galilee. Stephen is from the New South Wales Minerals Council, and we're going to talk about coal. And Stephen, how are you? Welcome to Credlin.
It's good to be with you, thank you.
Did you bring your lump of coal with you? I think you should always carry one around. I think we should all do that and bang it on the table.
I have one on the wall in my office to commemorate the first coal cut at the Maules Creek project here in New South Wales back in 2015.
Fantastic. Now, the New South Wales government is reviewing the independent planning process. So talk us through what this means and what are the problems with the independent planning process that we've seen so far.
Well, we've been calling for changes to the planning system in New South Wales for a long time now. It's a very complex, convoluted process. Planning assessment, not just of coal projects, but of mining projects, can take many, many years. In fact, we've seen projects sometimes take anywhere up to 10 or 12 years to be assessed, which is obviously a ridiculous time frame when you're trying to attract big investment. We've seen some recent decisions in the New South Wales planning system which have created a lot of uncertainty, the inconsistency in their outcomes, difficult to understand the conclusions that have been reached by the Independent Planning Commission, recommendations for refusal of projects or partial approval of projects, contrary to the advice of the Department of Planning and a range of other government departments and agencies. Those decisions are costing jobs and investment in New South Wales. They're sending a shudder through our industry and through other sectors here in New South Wales. You need investment certainty if you're going to attract big investment, and these are the projects that need big investment in New South Wales. We've seen a recent project, for example, refused, which was going to generate over $1 billion of investment in New South Wales and bring 1,100 jobs into regional New South Wales.
And where was that?
This was the Bylong project, the Kepco Bylong project, out near two communities of Candice and Rylstone, out near Mudgee in New South Wales. It was refused recently, despite the recommendation from the Department of Planning and the advice of 14 different government departments and agencies that it could proceed with appropriate conditions. That decision was what predicated our initiation of a public campaign to seek changes to the planning system. So we welcome the review from the government over the weekend that it's going to review the role and operation of the Independent Planning Commission. We're yet to see the detail of that review. We hope it will go far enough and will deliver the changes that are needed to bring some of these big projects back to New South Wales, because it's out in regional New South Wales where the jobs and investment is needed the most, particularly now with the drought.
Well, exactly, Stephen. We're losing people off the farm left, right and centre. The one great economic driver out in the bush, apart obviously from agriculture, is mining, and yet we're stymieing those people who could move, if, for example, into those jobs. You cited, the losses, the $1 billion losses, $300 million losses, 650 jobs in various different industries. One of the reasons, apparently, the Commission cited for, I think it was stopping Bylong Valley, was the impact of the coal being burnt in Korea. So how does this work? How does this work?
Well, those emissions are classified under the International Accounting Standards for Emissions as Scope 3 emissions. They're emissions generated at their final source. In this case, they are the emissions that are generated when our export coal, as you said in your introduction, our very high quality export coal is used in power stations across our region with our major trading partners to generate their low emissions electricity. That was one of several factors that were cited by the Independent Planning Commission in its decision to refuse the Bylong project. It's an issue that is becoming more and more prevalent in planning assessment in New South Wales. It has the potential to impact coal mining projects more generally, other projects across the planning system in other industries as well. It's an approach that's been taken by the Independent Planning Commission that to us is contrary to the protocols and international agreements in relation to the way emissions are calculated, because fundamentally Scope 3 emissions from our coal are Scope 1 emissions in your example in Korea, and they are accounted for under Korea's commitments under the Paris Agreement and in other accounting frameworks. So it's a very curious approach that's been taken. Our industry understands that we need to reduce our emissions and our impact, but to have projects starting to be refused partially on this basis does seem a counter to what we're trying to achieve here in New South Wales. And it also makes it very odd that an independent part-time planning panel seems to be setting the climate change and trading policies of our elected Australian government too. I would have thought that's not their role. That's the role of the elected governments to do that.
Precisely. And you mentioned the Paris Agreement. My personal opinion has always been we should never have ratified it, and we should in fact pull out of it because of the, if you like, the problem with the legality of it is that you get all sorts of activist judges and other people making decisions and citing, Stephen, the Paris Agreement as a reason, local councils and others saying, oh, yeah, we would have gone ahead with it, but because we're in the Paris Agreement, we can't. Now, here's the thing. We've got Labor and the Greens, obviously, wanting to declare a climate emergency. Now, just say, Scott Morrison has said he's not going to go down this path, well done, but let's just say for whatever reason we did declare a climate emergency. What kind of ramifications? Would that just destroy our coal industry full stop?
Well, if it was going to have an impact on our ability to export our coal, then it would gut our industry. It would gut our major export industry here in New South Wales. And now, as you said in your introduction, Rowan, our coal is very high quality, and you know, we should be seeking to replace coal used from elsewhere that generates higher emissions with coal from here in New South Wales that generates lower emissions, because it's not as if the countries that are using coal-fired power stations across our region, often in increasing numbers, are going to turn their power stations off because they can't get their coal from mines here in New South Wales. They're not turning those coal-fired power stations off. They're going to get their coal from elsewhere. It's going to be a lower quality coal. It's going to generate a higher emissions outcome overall. So those calling for emissions reductions in the real world should accept that our coal is going to generate that lower emissions outcome than coal used elsewhere, and supplying it should be part of our Paris Agreement commitment.
Stephen, we're going to have to leave it there, but I just have to ask the obvious question. Your surname is Galilee. That must have been very handy when you applied for a job at the Minerals Council, the Galilee Basin, of course, being where Adani is. Terrific to talk to you, Stephen. Thanks so much for coming on, and keep up the great work.